It's important that people do botanical art because, unlike photography, you can show exactly which way the hairs grow, and it's very good for botanists because they can recognize what kind of a plant it is from a carefully done, scientifically correct drawing or painting. And I just think it makes people look more closely at plants than they would normally. We call botanical art learning to see, because you're really seeing what's going on in this plant. I am Juliet Kirby. I'm a teacher at Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden. I teach advanced botanical painting. Some of us can't help but put our hands in the dirt. You know, I'm not happy if I haven't got my hands in the dirt. But painting is another thing. Painting is a craft, really. And I love the feeling of using a paintbrush as much as I love putting my hands in the dirt and making something grow. You need a garden to go out and stimulate yourself for the next painting that you're going to do. Because my kind of art is very slow, partly because the plants die on you while you're painting them. So a painting for me might take 2 years, because 1 year I would draw it and the next year I would paint it. Everything has to be so exactly correct in botanical art, because it takes a lot more time than other kinds of art. I think if you're a gardener, you have a passion for gardening for as long as you can do it. I have a passion for painting, and this is what I've chosen out of all the myriad kinds of art that one might do. And so I think you love it more and more. You know, I don't think that ever goes away. I hope for me that I can go on painting for a very long time. So.
Amazingly enough, I became interested in art very late in life. I went on a cruise when I was 69 years old. We were going through the Panama Canal, and there was a class there in botanic art. A nice lady came to give us some classes. And there are no flowers to pick if you're going through the Panama Canal, so she gave us each a dead beech leaf. And I painted that dead beech leaf, and I looked at that and I said, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. And then I came to Virginia and found the Lewis Ginter Gardens, where I took classes, and dear Juliet, who you just spoke to, became the real mentor of my painting. Well, I started this Shakespeare project, and this, at my age, at any age, has to be slight madness. Shakespeare mentioned 171 different plants in his works. That's a goodly number. A lot of them he knew. A lot of them were the wildflowers and the vegetables that grew along the hedgerows, and a lot of them still were growing when I was a child. A lot have gone since. So a lot of the work I had to do was to source the plants that he would have known and how they were likely to be. So for example, my first painting I thought would be nice and easy. I'd do with the orange and the lemon, which also came with cloves, so I had to find the look of the cloves. But the lemon was great, and I painted the lemon, and I suddenly thought, lemons were smaller than that when I was a child. So I had to go back and get rid of that lemon and paint a very little lemon and paint a little orange, because he would not have known the great big lemons that we grow. And same with all the vegetables that I had to paint. If I found them at the farmer's market, that was usually easier, and I had to sometimes persuade them to come next week with a rather withered, smaller sample of that vegetable. It's been fascinating. Amazingly enough, I've made them into 50 different compositions. Some had to be in one composition, because if he mentions 6 flowers or plants in one quotation, they have to go into one painting, which could be a challenge. Others were mentioned once or twice, so I would blend those together as groups of vegetables or foreign plants or foreign trees. And I finished number 50 last night. My mother was a very fine gardener, and she loved beautiful things and she loved beautiful plants. I grew up in a particularly lovely garden in England with the most magnificent view. The view looked over the River Thames in the distance, and on 3 terraces with huge cedars of Lebanon on either side of each terrace. So that was the framing of the view. My mother made beautiful gardens on the terraces and then other gardens around the side of the house. And it was hard not to really love the plants and love looking at them, learning a little about them. And I really fell in love with it when I was 40. My marriage had ended. My mother died very suddenly. And as I sat hearing the news that she died, I was just flooded with this ambition to have a garden. You know, you're on your hands and knees most of the time. You're digging in the earth, and you plant a little plant, or you plant a seed, and you watch it grow. You rather grow in love with it. And the plants and the trees you have, sometimes they take some years to really develop. And yet when they do, they become friends. And to me, it's natural then to want to take them and draw them and look at them more closely. And that's what I have learned in the Botanic art. We had some classes at Lewis Ginter in Botanic art itself. Oh, I thought I would hate this. As a child, botany was terrible. But you start looking at a flower and how the petals are formed and how they come apart, and the different parts of the centers, the corolla, the calyx. And then that makes your painting, your love of the plant so much greater. One becomes passionate about it. And then one goes back to the garden, and suddenly the flowers there are that much more important, because you're seeing how they grow, why they face the sun or they don't, why they like the shade or they don't.
So my journey into botanical art did lead me to meet several wonderful people, and 2 of them were in a show with me, and that was at the Botanical Gardens. And one's name is Juliet Kirby, and she's a lifelong artist. Her mother was an artist, and she's an amazing orchid painter, and she could paint anything with watercolor and make it exciting and interesting. And Leslie McEwen is her full name. She is also delightful and an amazing artist, but she's also a garden lover, and she grows beautiful things at her own house and has actually run her own herb business. But my journey into botanical art, which led to meeting these 2 wonderful people, I started out as a master gardener and realized that all these plants that I was learning to love and obsessing over, I just wanted to dig a little deeper into them, pun intended. I wanted to understand them better, and to do that, I would take up botanical art. And that was my goal, to do that. I had been an art teacher. I'd been around art all my life. My husband's an artist. My mother was an artist. I found this program in Richmond at Lewis Ginter Gardens, and that's where I met Lizzie and Juliet. We just love to look at each other's art and love to see the different ways that we attack our subject. So we just get excited and we encourage each other. It's really a great relationship. I have enjoyed it so very much. I've always loved botanical art. It just helped me think about the specimens individually. And because when you look at a large garden, it's so complex sometimes. But when someone looks at a piece of botanical art, they get to examine it like the artist did, and to just kind of take a moment, breathe deep, and see the way the petals fall, the organization of the leaves. So I think it's different than a photograph, because usually there's a white background. So it stands alone, and you just get to think of it very specifically for the specimen that it is. I do tour my garden most every day, and I like to see what's in season and what's blooming and what is turning red and where the tips are for the new buds. So I am doing basically kind of a florigelium or a record of my own garden. So the translation for me is kind of a memory because I think that whether you're painting or not, or drawing, the association of memory with a plant is fairly universal. Whether it's a gift to someone or just a moment of beauty in a house or pick it up at the grocery store. So I'm recording something that I see change. I started out working with the typical garden plants, which are not bad, but I found that I love trees, and my particular yard has a lot of trees, and those are just not the right plants. So I kept searching for plants that would survive under the conditions I offer, which is a lot of shade, and I'm not willing to do a lot of watering, so I want the plants to adapt to the environment. So I guess that's, I've always loved plants, but I have to always make sure that people understand that it's a love also of the ground, of the dirt, because it's an appreciation for what we can do with it. I can only hope that the educational system will return to having time to bring in plants into the classroom and to explain them how they grow. And I have seen that done with elementary students in the past because I was in the Master Gardening program, and when we would do that, the children would be so excited and say, my grandma has this kind of plant in their front yard, or I can't grow anything in the yard, I have it in an apartment, and they would be growing sunflowers in their window. But they would be fascinated. So don't be discouraged. Remind your family, your children, that having something that grows is important and to care for it. It teaches caring as well. Taking caring and being consistent. There's a lot to be taught. We don't have to be farmers, every one of us, but we can grow a few things of our own.